Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at the 2021 horror thriller movie called Ghost Lab. The movie starts off with the stage host calling two men to the stage. As they emerge, Wee and Gla prepare to give a speech. Just then, Wee's phone rings, waking him up from his dream. He's pranked by his colleagues and screams while they laugh at him. Wee picks up his glasses, joins the other doctors, and listens to the story about a man who burned himself only to end his life in the hospital. After pondering on the case, Gla, Wee's friend, tells the nurse to keep updating him as he walks to respond to a patient. Later at night, Wee sits with his mom and comforts her. Gla and his woman, Mai, check on Wee and ask him if he was going to eat out with them. Wee says no and they leave him. Wee eventually tucks his mother to sleep and sits beside her. Later on in the night, a security guard is doing his routine checks when he hears the sound of a door opening in the morgue. He walks towards the sound and hears a crunching sound and checks it out. He's taken aback as a monstrosity unfolds before him. Meanwhile, Gla and Wee are in the cafeteria talking about ghosts. After discussing for a while, Wee discovers Gla starstruck over something behind Wee. Gla points at Wee's back, and they both see the humanoid figure the security guard saw earlier. They slowly walk towards it and discover the creature doesn't appear on video. Amidst their curious admiration, the ghost scares them and disappears. Later on, both of them check out some CCTV footage and notice that the ghost doesn't appear on the camera as well. The next morning, the two of them make their way to the employee housing section of their hospital. They reach an old storage section and find Gla's research room. Gla unlocks his computer and explains all of his research and ghost experience to Wee. Apparently, Gla's dad died when he was younger and appeared to him one night 20 years ago during a late-stage snack. He says that that's what fueled his thirst for finding ghosts. Wee listens to Gla and then tells him he's in to find the ghosts. They shake hands and start the experiment. Gla tells Wee about all the interviews, rituals, and visits he's been doing secretly for the past 5 years. Gla says that he, sadly, hasn't seen any ghost. They ponder and eventually come up with a plan to use a heat sensor to find ghosts. They proceed to start their search for the ghosts. A week passes and they don't make progress. One night, they see an object in the cafeteria move on its own across from them. This makes Gla realize that they've been looking at things the wrong way. They decide to take a look at poltergeists. Later on, the CCTV cameras started capturing objects moving on their own. Wee and Gla walk to a dark part of the hospital holding their heat sensor. They move slowly as they explore some rooms and labs. After some time, they open a door and see the wheelchair in the records room. Chaotic later on, and Wee points the heat sensor at the empty space ahead to reveal a cold presence. The duo leaves and went back to base. To Wee's disapproval, Gla then says that he needs to review his interviews. In the next scene, Mia tells Gla that she won't be able to make it to their date on the weekend due to a work project. Gla says that it's okay, kisses her goodbye, and drives back to the hospital. Back at the hospital, Wee tells Gla that they should classify the ghosts based on their relationship with them when they were alive. Wee classifies them into the known and unknown ghosts. He tells Gla that they should focus more on the ghosts they know, or the known ghosts, so it'll be easier to find them. Gla comes up with a sick plan to get a known ghost. Gla visits a first-year student with cancer and becomes her boyfriend, so when she dies, she'd come back to them. Wee is uncomfortable with this arrangement, but goes on with his plan. After doing the deed, Wee is informed about his mother's aggravated condition. Wee runs to her room and hears the bad news. Wee lets his heart out to his mother. Shortly afterwards, Wee kisses his mother goodbye and she gives up the ghost. Gla installs a camera in Wee's mother's room after her body is carted away and stays with Wee for the night. Some time passes and Wee tells Gla that he wants to cross over to the other side, do the experiment, and come back to life. Gla tries to talk some sense into him and they get into an argument. After the heated argument, Wee manages to tell Gla that that's the only way forward. Wee said that just in case, he'd write a suicide note explaining how he died so the cops don't investigate Gla. Wee then sets up a camera to record his trip to the other side. After saying his goodbyes, he finds a gun, puts it in his mouth, but can't pull the trigger. He remembers what his mother told him that night and drops the gun. Gla enters the room and sees his friend in pain. He picks up the gun and goes instead. Wee watches in horror as his friend just killed himself. The next scene shows Wee getting called onto a stage to give a presentation about the afterlife experiment. He walks onto the stage and introduces himself and an invisible Glah, who he claims was standing beside him. Glah makes his appearance, which lights up the room. Reporters are, however, unable to get his picture. Just then, Mai challenges Wee over letting his friend die and fires the gun at herself. Wee wakes up, takes his smoke, and inputs "Day 91 with no contact" in his sheets. He then checks the news and sees different articles hovering around about Glah's death. Shortly after, he watches a video of his friend's last interview and how he killed himself. During Glah's funeral, his mother cries to Wee. Wee helps Mai with her luggage at the airport and leaves after being questioned by Mai. Later that night, Wee tries to end his life by falling off the hospital roof. However, he's stopped from falling by an invisible force who holds onto his tie. Wee laughs as he realizes that the force could be his friend. He runs back to his room and records the contact on his sheet. Just then, he notices the Newton balls in his room moving. Wee understands that the presence was trying to communicate with him. He makes other speculations about the presence and tries to cut his finger so the presence is forced to save him again. Fortunately for Wee, he's saved once again and jubilates as the presence types "hi" on the laptop. The next morning, Wee communicates with Glah. He reasons out some facts and comes to the conclusion that he needs to mix water vapor and electricity for his friend to appear to him. Glah then communicates to Wee via the laptop and tells him to find a beach. Wee visits Glah's residence and tells Glah's mother that Glah spoke to him in a dream, and that Glah said he might be a wandering ghost forever due to the nature of his death. They all get goosebumps, and weird things start to happen in the house. Glah's sister then throws Wee out. Before he goes though, Glah tells Wee to say "Ka Kai," and Wee says it. Glah's mother hears this and invites Wee to stay for dinner. On his way back home, Wee discusses things with Glah back and forth. Glah kept on saying beach in the typings. Wee tried to make sense of what he meant by beach. However, Glah disappears before Wee could understand. 3 days later, Wee wonders why Glah hasn't made any appearance again. Wee tries to force Glah back into the world of the living. He does this by trying to cut his finger again. This time, no one comes to help, and he cuts his finger. Thankfully, the professionals in the hospital were able to glue his finger back together. Wee argues with his doctor and walks outside. He sees Ma, who asks him for Glah's red laptop. Wee says that he hasn't seen it and tells Mai that Glah chose to do what he did and that she should stop looking for answers. Wee gets back to his office and notices the red laptop missing. He goes to Mai's residence and tells a lie about finding Glah's laptop in the trunk of his car and not being able to unlock the laptop for days. They both try to unlock the laptop but fail after an hour of trying. Wee then tells Mai that he knows someone who can break into the laptop. He tries to carry the laptop away but is stopped by Mai. After an argument, Wee manages to convince Mai that he knew Glah better than she did and that she didn't know what was going on in his head, and Mai apologizes. As the two hug, something weird happens. Glah's laptop opens up and something types in the password, opens up some files, and starts playing videos. Wee closes it and goes outside. In the elevator, Glah tells him to show Mai their research, and Wee declines for fear of exposure. Glah threatens to kill Wee if he doesn't tell Mai the truth. Wee keeps quiet. Wee invites Mia over to his room at the hospital and gives her a drink. He goes outside to take a smoke and wonders how he can boost Glah's spiritual energy. He then goes back in and sees Mai unconscious on his couch. Wee tries to touch her obscenely. This infuriates Glah, and he tells Wee to stop it. Wee laughs and is happy that his friend finally came back. Wee provokes Glah until he's forced to throw Wee away from Mai. Shortly afterwards, Glah's legs materialize behind their board. Wee tells him to show themselves so that they can see their success, but Glah only shows himself for an instant and starts trying to take out Wee. Wee escapes the room into the corridor. Glah, however, catches him and throws him to the ground. Glah plays around with Wee a little bit more and throws him downstairs. Wee lands on his back and breaks both legs and other bones. Wee then takes out his phone to record that triggering negative emotions made Glah reveal his true self for the first time. Just then, Glah gets downstairs and twists Wee's legs even more. While still on record, Wee aggravates Glah's spirit and is knocked out in the process. When Wee comes to, He sees himself on a table in the morgue. One of the bodies then stands up, unzips itself from the body bag, and faces Wee. Wee is amazed that Glah could get back to his body. Wee tries to record the event but is thrown by Glah. Glah then walks forward and strangles Wee. Wee then dies and appears in a white place. He sees Glah, who asks him how they got to the point they were in. Glah tries to talk Wee into stopping the experiment. Wee tries to talk to him about how far into the experiment they've already gone, but Glah says that he doesn't want Wee to sacrifice himself anymore. Glah then says goodbye to Wee and moves on. Wee's ghost then appears back in real life and sees Glah trying to resuscitate him. He eventually comes to as his friend, Glah, goes back to the other side and dies again. The next scene shows two people discussing an investigation into the case near Wee's hospital bed. Wee gets back home and sees his friend's laptop. He thinks about his life with Glah and tries to delete all their research. Later that night, Wee returns Glah's laptop to Mai and apologizes for the other night. Mai tells Wee about a dream she had about her and Glah meeting at a beach. She then said that he was holding a copy of their book titled The Experiment in her dream. The movie ends as Wee finally deletes their research and decides to keep learning.